In Missouri, 10-term Democratic Congressman William Lacy Clay lost his primary to Black Lives Matter activist Cori Bush. Jason Rosenbaum joins me now. He's a politics correspondent for St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome to Red and Blue, Jason. First of all, who is Cori Bush, and how was she able to pull off a win against Congressman William Lacy Clay?
Cori Bush is a single mother. She's a nurse. She's the daughter of a prominent North St. Louis County municipal politician. And come January, she'll be the first Black woman ever to serve in Congress from Missouri. And the way she did it was that she ran in 2018. She lost by about 20 percentage points, but she came back in 2020 with a disciplined campaign that was well-funded and well-supported by not only activists who are kind of aligned with Bernie Sanders around the country, but also activists who, like the Vermont independent senator in St. Louis, they've become an increasingly influential political faction here. And what makes this even more remarkable is that both William Lacy Clay and his father Bill Clay had been the representative for the 1st District for the last 52 years and had created one of the first political organizations that was headed by a Black person in the entire state. So this is not only remarkable from the fact that it's another progressive challenger that ousted an incumbent congressman, but it's also an end of a very long and important era for St. Louis politics.
You know, Jason, I remember in 2014, after Michael Brown, a Black teenager, was shot and killed by a white police officer, those massive protests in Ferguson, Missouri. That was 6 years ago. How significant is Cori Bush's victory for local activists, and also the timing of this as well, Jason, if you could speak to that? This happened in this moment of racial reckoning in our country.
I'm really glad that you mentioned this, because nationally, I think that this story is getting a lot of attention because of Bush's kind of relation to people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Jamal Bowman. But I really feel that the reason this is so significant is this is the first time a demonstrator, activist, or protester from the movement that came about after Michael Brown's shooting death in Ferguson has been elected to Congress. And if you ask a lot of the people that were in the streets in Ferguson and St. Louis for close to 2 years, even after a lot of the national media left, and they devoted a lot of their time, their reputations were put up into this public display, they went through their own mental health anguish. This is a remarkable accomplishment for that movement. And the fact that Cori Bush is going to probably be going to a Congress where Democrats are in the majority, even though she's going to be low in the seniority rank, because she's going to be part of this growing class of progressive freshmen, I think she's going to be able to actually effectuate the discussion and move some of the policy needles forward that wouldn't be possible in, say, the state legislature in Missouri.
And let's talk more broadly. 7 House incumbents, Democrat and Republican, have lost primaries this cycle. What does her nomination mean for progressives in Missouri and nationally as well?
I think that it's a big deal locally in St. Louis for the reasons that I mentioned. A lot of progressive candidates had failed to win major offices in St. Louis, primarily because they did reasonably well in predominantly white parts of St. Louis City, but failed to get significant amounts of Black voters on their side. Even though both Lacy Clay and Cori Bush are both African American, in 2018, Lacy Clay won the Black vote overwhelmingly, which is not surprising given that both he and his father have a really deep connection with Black voters here. I looked at some of the numbers today, and it was very clear that Cori Bush was able to win because she increased the amount of Black voters into her tally from 2018. And I think that's a really big sign that the progressive movement in St. Louis is getting a lot more racially diverse. You are getting some Black voters that may have been hesitant to it for various reasons, now willing to give Cori Bush a chance. It may be because there was a feeling that Black women in St. Louis during this election cycle were under attack. Lacy Clay ran some very harsh mailers against Cori Bush, and it was also going on at the same time when 2 other Black women, Tashara Jones, the city treasurer, and Kim Gardner, the circuit attorney, were going through really nasty primaries where they both won, despite the fact that they were under political attack. So there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think that that's probably the biggest significance, the fact that a progressive candidate like Cori Bush and the progressive movement in St. Louis has been able to expand to Black voters.
Jason, I also want to ask you about health care, which is very much, of course, top of mind for so many people. Missouri voters also approved expanding Medicaid. How many more people in your state will have access to health care when that's implemented?
When Medicaid expansion is eventually implemented, it would mean that 250,000 more Missourians would have access to the healthcare program for the poor, elderly, and disabled. And this is part of a trend among a lot of other states who have signed on to Medicaid expansion under the auspices of the Affordable Care Act. What's notable in Missouri's case is Missouri used to have one of the lowest eligibility rates, and that went back to 2005 when Governor Matt Blunt, a Republican, cut Medicaid eligibility very low to solve a budgetary problem, and it's remained really low for 15 years. So this is a culmination of a 15-year-long movement, primarily among Missouri Democrats who have been way out of power in Missouri. They were able to team up with hospitals that strongly supported this and other healthcare advocates. This is a really big deal from a policy perspective, not only optically in the fact that Democrats got to win, but this is going to change the way this program is offered to a state that has a lot of people in poverty and may need access to this really important governmental program.
A lot of shifts happening in your state there. Jason Rosenbaum with St. Louis Public Radio. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.